My boss and his wife are staying over to discuss my promotion, Eleanor, he claimed. It's purely professional. So, I spent Christmas Eve alone in a cold, budget motel room, staring at a flickering television. But just after midnight, my phone rang. It was my husband, his voice shaking with absolute terror. Honey, why are you all over the news? I looked up at the TV screen and my heart stopped. There I was on the breaking news banner, but not for the reason he thought. It was the moment I realized my entire 15-year marriage was a lie and that the boss's wife sleeping in my bed was someone else entirely. If you want to know how a simple dinner turned into a nationwide scandal, follow my story to the end. My name is Eleanor. I am 45 years old, and until yesterday, I believed I had the perfect life. For 15 years, I poured every ounce of my energy into being a supportive wife to my husband, David. I managed our home, hosted his corporate dinners, and stood by him as he climbed the ranks at his investment firm. I thought we were a team, but everything shattered on December 23rd. David came home, avoided my eyes, and delivered a devastating blow. Eleanor, I need you to stay at a motel or go to your sister's for Christmas, he said, his voice flat. My CEO, Mr. Sterling, and his wife are staying over to discuss my partner promotion. It's a make-or-break meeting, and they want to see how I handle things independently. I was stunned. Banished from my own home for Christmas? It felt incredibly humiliating, but David pleaded, telling me my presence would somehow complicate the delicate corporate dynamics. Desperate to support the career I had helped him build, I packed a small overnight bag, swallowed my pride, and walked out. I drove through a light snowfall to a bleak, budget motel on the edge of the city. As I checked into the drafty room, the sound of festive music from the lobby felt like a cruel mockery. I sat on the edge of a squeaky bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper, entirely alone on the holiday. But a strange, cold knot was forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. The silence in that dingy motel room was deafening, and with each passing second, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. David's explanation just didn't make sense. Why would a CEO demand a wife leave her own home for a professional meeting? My mind raced, searching for some logical explanation. That's when my eyes fell on my tablet sitting in my bag. I suddenly remembered that it was still synced to our home's smart security system, including the high-definition cameras covering our front porch and driveway. My hands shook as I unlocked the screen and opened the app. I told myself I was being paranoid, expecting to see Mr. Sterling's luxury sedan parked outside. But when the live feed loaded, my breath caught in my throat. There was no CEO. Instead, a sleek red coupe I didn't recognize was parked in our driveway. Just then, the front door opened, and David stepped out into the porch light. A young, attractive woman in her late 20s stepped out of the car, carrying designer overnight bags and wrapped gifts. It was none other than Chloe, David's administrative assistant. I watched in absolute horror as David wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her into a passionate, lingering kiss right on our doorstep. The truth hit me like a physical blow. There was no promotion. There was no business meeting. My husband of 15 years had banished me to a cheap motel just to clear our house for a secret, romantic Christmas getaway. My chest heaved, gasping for air as the tablet slipped from my trembling fingers. The betrayal was a suffocating weight. Blinded by a mixture of hot tears and absolute rage, I couldn't stay in that depressing motel room for another second. I grabbed my keys, ran out into the freezing winter night, and drove aimlessly through the snowy city streets. I was desperate for the icy wind to numb the agonizing pain in my chest. As I neared the historic downtown shopping plaza, the peaceful atmosphere was suddenly shattered. Bright orange flames erupted violently from the windows of a popular toy store. A crowd was already gathering, screaming in sheer panic. I slammed on my brakes and stepped out into the growing chaos. Thick, black smoke billowed into the sky, and then I heard a frantic mother's agonizing shriek. My little baby is still trapped inside near the entrance. Before I could even process what I was doing, pure survival adrenaline took over. I completely ignored the blistering heat and the desperate cries of bystanders telling me to stop. I wrapped my heavy wool scarf tightly around my face and rushed straight through the dark, choking, smoke-filled doors. Coughing violently, I spotted a terrified little girl huddled under a burning display counter. I grabbed her, pulled her tightly against my chest, and ran. We stumbled out onto the snowy pavement just as the heavy wooden storefront collapsed behind us in a massive, blinding shower of dangerous sparks. As I lay on the freezing pavement, gasping for fresh air, the little girl was quickly pulled into her mother's sobbing embrace. My lungs burned, and my hands were black with soot, but there was no time to process the adrenaline. Suddenly, bright, blinding studio lights pierced through the thick, swirling smoke. A local news crew, already downtown reporting on the holiday traffic, had caught my entire desperate rescue live on television. A reporter rushed toward me, thrusting a microphone in my face as the camera zoomed in.
Ma'am,
You just saved that child's life. What is your name? Please tell us who you are. Shaken, coughing, and carrying the heavy, invisible weight of David's betrayal, I simply couldn't face the world. I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to crawl into a dark corner and grieve my broken marriage in peace. I shook my head, pushed past the reporter, and quietly slipped into the shadows, driving straight back to my lonely motel room. But my desperate attempt at anonymity was completely useless. The live broadcast of my desperate rescue had already gone completely viral online. The news anchor dubbed me the mysterious Christmas Eve angel, plastering my face across every local television station and social media feed. As the internet erupted in a frantic search to identify me, my soot-covered face became the biggest story of the night. I was a national holiday hero to millions, but inside, I was still just a discarded, broken wife. I stumbled back into my bleak motel room, my clothes smelling heavily of smoke and my throat raw from the fire. I turned on the old television just to drown out the racing thoughts in my head, but the moment the screen flickered to life, I froze. My own face, covered in soot and filled with raw emotion, was staring back at me. The red banner across the bottom of the screen read, "Breaking news. Local Christmas Eve angel saves child from blazing toy store." I stared in disbelief. I was the lead story on every major network. Before I could even process the absurdity of my situation, my phone began to vibrate violently on the nightstand. The screen lit up with David's name. The clock on the wall read exactly 12:05 a.m. I took a deep breath, slid the bar to answer, and remained completely silent. "Eleanor? Oh my God, Eleanor, is that you?" David's voice was high-pitched, frantic, and hyperventilating. In the background, I could hear the faint, anxious whispering of Chloe. "Honey, why are you all over the news? What is going on?" He was absolutely terrified. And in that second, I understood exactly why. He and his mistress had been cuddling on our couch, watching the holiday broadcast, only to see his exiled wife playing a real-life superhero right in the middle of our city. He realized in a heartbeat that his entire, elaborate lie about the CEO was in absolute jeopardy. He knew I hadn't gone to my sister's house hours away. I was right here, practically on his doorstep, and the guilt was choking him through the phone line. His perfect, carefully constructed holiday plan was now completely crashing down around him, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it now. I didn't answer his frantic questions. I simply hung up, grabbed my car keys, and drove straight back to our suburban home, my heart hardened with a cold, relentless resolve. I didn't even bother wiping the black soot from my face or hands. I wanted them to see exactly what a real storm looked like. When I unlocked the front door and stepped into the entryway, the cozy warmth of the house felt like a slap in the face. David and Chloe were standing near the fireplace, frozen in terror, their faces pale. The television in our living room was still playing the live broadcast of my face. "Eleanor," David stammered, taking a step back. "Please let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." "Save it, David," I said, pulling out my phone and holding up the live camera footage of their passionate doorstep kiss. "I saw everything. I know there's no Mr. Sterling." Chloe panicked. Seeing the soot on my clothes and the icy determination in my eyes, she completely lost her nerve. "David, I told you this was a mistake," she shrieked, backing away. If she calls the police, they're going to look into the company accounts. I'm not going to prison for your embezzlement scheme. We were supposed to frame her while she was away at her sister's, remember? That was your brilliant plan to cover your debts. My breath caught, but I kept my composure. It was a shocking double twist I never saw coming. David had been stealing from his investment firm, and they were planning to make me the fall guy. Slowly, I turned my phone screen toward them, revealing the blinking red recording icon. I had captured every single word of her desperate, panicked confession. The look on David's face was priceless. I did not hesitate. I drove straight to the police station on Christmas morning and handed over the recording. With that audio confession and security footage, the police acted fast. By afternoon, as the snow fell, David and Chloe were arrested for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The evidence was bulletproof. They could not escape. David's desperate plan to frame me had completely backfired. As the true story of the Christmas Eve angel came to light, the community rallied behind me. The local news praised my bravery at the fire, but also my courage in standing up to a lying husband. With public support and a great legal team, the divorce was finalized quickly. I won the house, sold it to wipe away the past, and used the cash to build a beautiful new life. I realized that sometimes you must lose everything to find yourself. Now, I am curious about you who followed my story. What would you do if your husband told you not to come home for Christmas? Would you have checked those security cameras? And do not forget to mention which city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has arrived. Favorite stories right here on the screen for you to watch next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very